everyone, and welcome to Channel 18 TV News. I'm Don Julian. In the news, at least 4 people were placed in the Hopkins County Jail on Wednesday on 3 felony counts and 1 misdemeanor, according to arrest reports. 39-year-old Letitia Monte Childers of Como was transported from another jail to Hopkins County on a bench warrant for violation of probation. Woman was on probation for a September 26, 2017 engaging in organized criminal activity charge. She also has warrants for possession of drug paraphernalia, expired registration, driving while license invalid, and failure to maintain financial responsibility. 38-year-old Jason Scott Flowers was transported to Hopkins County from another jail for violation of probation. The man was on probation for manufacture or delivery of more than 1 gram of a controlled substance. And 55-year-old Robert Kent Shep of Picton was arrested Wednesday in Hopkins County District Court. The man arrived in court and the district judge remanded him into custody of the county jail. The man has been charged with 2 counts of possession of 4 ounces or more of marijuana. And finally, 22-year-old Mount Vernon man arrived at the Hopkins County Sheriff's Office Wednesday morning inquiring about a possible warrant out for him. A check revealed that there was. The man was wanted for possessing 2 ounces or more of marijuana, and he was jailed under $5,000 bond.
Paula Altenbaumer is a historian and a genealogist who loves to preserve the history of Hopkins County. She's got a couple of different invitations for you for this month.
I went to Picton School the first 9 years.
Okay.
We consolidated when I was a freshman.
Okay.
Back then, our schools were 1st grade through 12th grade. So when you go to a small school like that, you are a lot more involved with what's going on all the way up. We went to pep rallies when I was a 1st grader. We would go out and the little kids would go out and sit down at the end of the cafetorium, which is now our community center. But we would sit there and the cheerleaders would have our pep rallies, and even when I was a little bitty kid.
That is so neat and interesting. Well, today when we see the Picton Community Center, which was the cafetorium of the school, where was the rest of the school?
The rest of the school would be west of there. It was a WPA school, and it was Stones that came from the area, and they built the school back in the 30s. And it's gone now, but the cafeteria's there, and the alumni are the main people that help keep it up.
Well, the building that we see now, and it's kind of long and rambling, and it's stone, and it has edging of stone out around the sidewalk area, I think, parking area. But it's just lovely. But was the school itself an older building, and the cafetorium a newer building?
Yes, the school was an older building. When it was first built, kids brought their lunch. There wasn't a cafeteria. I remember in that cafeteria when my first few years of school, lunch was 20 cents a day or $1 a week. And I still remember they served Spam, and when they served Spam, they served cherry cobbler.
Oh.
And so we would mix the juice off the cherry cobbler on top of the Spam. So school was a little different then.
Do you remember feeling like when you got a cafeteria that you had kind of come uptown or something?
Well, the time I was there was a cafeteria. Okay. It was there the whole time I went to school, so I don't really know when it was built.
You know, this kind of suits you in a way because you love the history of Hopkins County, and you bring a little bit of that your own self.
Yes, I enjoy the history. I like to portray different characters. In fact, our historical park is having Indian Summer Days this Saturday, and we love to see everybody there. But what I want to tell you about was our Picton school reunion.
And before we do, and there is a date on that which we're going to get to, but will you be in costume this Saturday
Yes, I will.
at Heritage Park?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
It's going to be a little hot, but I'm still going to do costume.
Good. Well, thank you, Paula Alterbaumer, for that part of the talents that you bring. But the Picton School Reunion is set for October
19th.
19th? Okay.
At 10 o'clock we meet, and at noon we have lunch, and it's potluck. But if you don't have time to cook or something, stop and grab some rolls. Just bring yourselves, and we need to keep this alive.
Are there fewer people each year that come to the reunion?
Yes, but last year was one of our larger years because we honored the classes of 68 and 58. And 58, most of them were there. I think all four.
Okay.
I think there were back then there were some years that were very small.
Very small graduating class. Which
yes.
Well, even in our county schools, it's still that way a little bit. But now, at some point, such as you, in the 8th grade or 9th grade, you then had to go to Como.
Yes.
Picton.
When we consolidated, the high school went to Como, and the grade school came to Picton.
Okay.
So I was a freshman, and I went to Picton High School 1 year, and then Como Picton 3 years. This year we want to honor the class of 69, but they never went to high school at Picton.
Okay.
But they did go, a lot of them, 8 years at Picton.
Well, so when you consolidated in 1965,
yes,
the high schoolers went to Como Picton, but did the grade school stay at Picton?
The grade school, the Como children, grade school children came to Picton, and the Picton high school children went to Como.
Okay.
Because kind of the sizes of the school buildings kind of dictated that.
Well, do you know how long that went on?
It went on, until, my brother graduated in 72. I think it was 74 when it became one building. They built the new school.
Okay.
And I could be a little off on my date, but I think it was 74.
That is so interesting, the way things were done back then.
The two high schools came together when we consolidated, and we selected the school colors, black and blue, and then we selected our mascot, and so the two high schools did that back then. But Picton still has a school reunion, because we all went to school together for so long, and of course, like everything else, we're aging out. We still have a lot of very faithful people, but we're trying to get some of those that maybe are a little younger to get in, that went to Picton, to get involved, because we can't see this die out, because the community center is important to the community, but the alumni have a great deal to do with keeping it up.
And as you say, more help will be needed as time goes on,
yes.
and certain ones who are active will be able to do a little less. And speaking of someone from the past, I want to bring up a lady who taught at Picton forever, and she was just a staple at Picton.
Miss Pauline.
Miss Pauline.
When I was a second grader, which was a very long time ago, she had taught 32 years. I have a history right here in front of me that she wrote about Picton, telling all about it and who was, and when it began and so on. So she saw Picton happen, and she lived to be, I believe, 101.
Yes, she did.
And everybody loved Miss Pauline. Back then, school was a little different. I learned the 23rd Psalm in her class, and I learned the books of the Bible in her class at school. So things were different.
She had mentioned, she used to tell us things when we'd go out to visit with her, and people loved to go and visit. She had a great memory, and it lasted all along, and she would just regale you with tales of days in the classroom. But she said that there was a car I don't know if it was her car or someone's car, but occasionally you'd get to go to Sulphur Springs, but it was very muddy.
Yes.
And it just wasn't an easy trip like we would imagine getting to go to town now.
Yes. The roads back then were horrible. In fact, the roads were not made all weather until 1968, the fall of 1968. They started putting oil to make the roads irregular. Otherwise, on the school bus, you often were stuck, literally.
Miss Pauline also told us, and maybe it was Tumbleweed Smith and I had gone out for an interview with her, but she said she was at school one day and her husband was a soldier away at war. And he showed up at the school to see her. He came back, and of course she was at school, so that's where he came to see her. And the kids got to see that. That probably impressed them.
Yes, Mr. Hayden. Yes, he drove a bus and, of course, kept a farm like everybody did. But I remember Mr. Hayden as well as Miss Pauline. Miss Pauline started teaching, I think, when she was 16 with a teaching certificate. And I believe she went to school in the summers and got her full teaching certificate later.
Such wonderful people that have peopled our county and done each one their part to make it such an interesting place. The Picton School, though, is not being forgotten because the reunion is set for a couple of weeks ahead, October 19th. That's a Saturday.
Yes.
And so you're expecting some of your classmates to come back?
Several of my classmates will. There's not a lot of us, but we're really encouraging the class that were 8th graders during that time because they will be honored. The class of 49, 59, and they would have been the class of 69 will be honored. Even though they were 8th graders and didn't go to Picton High School, they were still part of Picton alumni. And we don't want to forget that Picton existed, and I'm sure, and Como doesn't want to forget that Como existed. We have combined, but we both had schools at one time. And it's pretty important to keep your roots alive.
This is so true. What else does Picton still have today?
Picton has Foster's restaurant and 2 Baptist churches and 1 Methodist church.
Okay.
I was married in 1969 in that Methodist church. And Miss Pauline played the piano in the Tabernacle Baptist Church for many, many years. She finally told him when she was close to 90, she thought it was time that maybe somebody else should do it.
Oh, Tabernacle Baptist Church is very active as a big congregation.
They are.
And they do lots of things through the year.
They do. Back when I was in high school, the Methodist kids from Picton went up and cleaned up the Woodman Hall, and we had dances in the Woodman Hall. In fact, that's where my husband and I had our first date.
Well, you're talking about Woodmen of the World.
Yes.
And there's still a fraternal organization like insurance that many people here have policies yet with Woodmen of the World, and some have just purchased, they're newly purchased, but we have a lodge here that meets at the senior center, but Picton actually had a building.
Had a building. It had a concrete floor, just a big barn-like building that was perfect for dances. And our sponsors at the Methodist church that sponsored the kids there would come and chaperone, and we had a wood stove in there, and we had dances there.
No wonder you love to portray pioneers, because part of your life was spent in an area that was still pretty pioneerish.
Well, I was raised next door to a grandmother that was born in 1885, and so I grew up with a generation older than me mostly, because you live out in the country. Sometimes there's not people close by, so you get a little more influence from your ancestors.
And I think it's all good. We're going to remind people about 2 or 3 things now. The Picton School Reunion is October 19th.
Yes, 10 o'clock starts visitation.
Okay. Also, this weekend,
we have some Indian Summer Days at Heritage Park at 9, and we have a Dutch oven cook-off, so you can come out and eat Dutch oven food, and all of our buildings will be open. We have kids' activities. We're going to have hatchet toss.
Oh, boy.
They're going to be able to use, the kids are going to be able to use a bracing bit to drill a hole. There'll be a crosscut saw. We'll have archery, hula hoops, balloons, chin punch for the kids. But then all the buildings are open. We'll have a sweet shop open. We'll have dulcimers, quilters. There'll be a banjo player. We'll have handcrafts. It's just really, if you've not been there, you need to go.
I think there'll be Indian artifacts on display.
Yes, there will. Yes. And we'll have the French and Indian person that's coming to talk. You would be surprised that there were French and Indian traders here in Hopkins County and nearby. And we also have someone with Caddo Indian artifacts that came from down on Stouts Creek near Pine Forest.
So fascinating. Thank you for the part that you play and the characters that you portray throughout the year and the ones that you continue adding to your, I guess, your repertoire.
It's just a hobby, and it's something I enjoy doing.
Thank you, Paula Altenbaumer.
Thank you.
Appreciate you for coming in today.
In sports, the head football coach for the Forney Jackrabbits is Aaron Woods. He's in his second year at Forney, and it's his first head coaching gig. Before coming to Forney, Woods spent a year as an assistant coach at Waxahachie under former NFL quarterback John Kitna, who's now working as a Dallas Cowboys assistant. Woods was at Cedar Hill before that for 14 years as an assistant to head coach Joey McGuire, who's now the Baylor Bears assistant head football coach. This year, Forney is 1-2 in district play with a win over Terrell and losses to Royce City and North Forney. The Jackrabbits split their two non-district games this year, winning over Richardson-Berkner and losing to Lindale. Coach Woods said this Forney season has been one of a lot of growth. He says 4 sophomores start on both offense and defense. Coach Woods said Forney has struggled on offense. He said they've had a lot of injuries on both sides of the ball. He also said the Jackrabbits have played some good teams. Coach Woods said he is excited about playing Sulphur Springs in Forney on Friday night. He admitted it's going to be difficult for Forney to get into the playoff picture. He said right now Ennis, Corsicana, and Royce City have all started out with strong seasons. And right now he thought North Forney might be the favorite for the 4th spot. However, Coach Woods adds, you just never know. He said he has to make sure his young Jackrabbits show up every game ready to play. The Forney quarterback, senior Campbell Anderson, returns. Coach Woods said he struggled a little with a new offense at the first of the season, but he said that Anderson is also a great leader, and he said Anderson runs the ball well. Coach Woods said his offensive line has been solid this year, but they have had some injuries. He said primary Jackrabbit running backs are Jalen Phillips and also Josh Stevens, whose brother Sean was a 1,000-yard rusher for Forney last year. Coach Woods said his top receivers are Riley McMurrin and also Braden Benjamin. On defense, Coach Woods said the Forney scores do not reflect how well their defense has played. He said defensive leaders include safety Keyshawn Johnson, inside linebacker Dalbert Najijagong, defensive line overachievers Cade Crawford, Curtis Kitchen, and Jorge Tello, and outside linebacker Weston Beeman. Coach Woods said Beeman and Johnson are so small that he refers to them as ankle biters. Coach Woods said he's surprised that the Wildcats have struggled so far this season, but he said he knows how hard it is to get a win. He said he has great respect for Coach Greg Owens. He said watching the Wildcats on tape, he said they play hard. And Coach Woods said the Wildcats have the potential to be really good on offense. He liked the way Wildcats quarterback Caden Wallace can throw the football. He noted last year's game was a high-scoring affair and he said this year's game just might be 1-2. And that's Channel 18 TV News. I'm Don Julian. Thank you for joining me, and so long, everybody.